Hello, this is Chuck Thompson, Director of WorldEmergency, bringing you World Emergency Radio. This program is dedicated to giving you understanding, guidance, and direction in regards to what should you do before any crisis comes to you. The sponsor of this program is Walmart, simply because Walmart, as a corporation, department store, supplies more logistically the basic necessities of life that you need. And for any disaster, earthquake, fire, flood, or civil unrest, they have the supplies, they have the equipment, and it is in a city, in a neighborhood near you, and increasingly more logistically sound internationally as well. So I simply implore you, get yourself prepared. The supplies and equipment at Walmart is readily available and in many locations 24 hours a day. I write within the publication titled Reconciling Us for Revolution 3 simple questions. 1. Are we prepared? You have economical crisis, whether the dollar collapses or the euro or any other currency internationally. Increasingly, we have continued terrorist attacks and threats, ecological crisis, volcanic eruptions, shutting down airports globally. And yes, without warning. Number 2, are we ready? Unprecedented earthquakes, infrastructure collapse, nuclear reaction, explosions as we have seen in Japan, poisonous chemical and biological fires, disastrous tsunami floods. I didn't even know the word tsunami until 2004. Now, I dare say the whole world, every person on the face of the earth knows the word and the meaning of a tsunami. You have civil unrest, government upheavals, increasingly throughout the United States and internationally. And number 3, do we know what to do? Here in the United States, especially throughout Texas, we have droughts, famines, which will quickly begin if the droughts continue. Following starvation, we have plagues, bubonic, Ebola, a plethora of pestilence on animals, plants, and people, along with disease epidemics, pandemics, bird and swine flu, mad cow disease, threatening our food supply and our water, which is being poisoned from one end of our nation to the other. Listen, now is the time to educate, to give guidance and direction with life-saving information on what to do and how to do it. Many life-changing catastrophes will come more increasingly upon us, the United States, because disastrous calamities fall unexpectedly. We must be prepared. Now, Walmart, along with other corporations throughout the United States and internationally, will sponsor a program called the Watchman Program. This will be a universal vehicle to supply understanding, guidance and direction, supplies and equipment to help the people of the United States and the entire international community. The simple solution is education. Education is the key. When sudden societal crisis collapses around us, ignorance, that's right, ignorance makes the disaster worse. An ignorant person, one who lacks required knowledge, is a dangerous person. And regarding the news headlines that I read, which are in the book titled Reconciling Us a Revolution. Over 90% of the citizens within the United States fit that reality of danger. The time to be ready is before the crisis. The unbelievable destruction within Japan wasn't a dream or a drill. The time has now passed for the government of Japan to prepare for the devastation that took place already on March 11, 2011. Just as there is no need to ring a warning bell that is already rung. And listen, Japan will need to prepare for the next disaster, and there most certainly will be one. However, this massive disaster must be a warning to the rest of the world. We're next. That's right. We're next, and you had better believe it is inevitable. We will experience what our Japanese brethren are going through right now, still now. This warning to the world is very sobering. The Japanese people, we need to understand, are more prepared for these tectonic, earth-moving events more than any nation around the globe. For example, regarding earthquakes, California is more prepared than any state in the Union. Yet, California does not come anywhere near the nation of Japan in preparedness. Recently, you had the report of 30,000 buildings within the state of California have been identified as needing earthquake retrofitting. And listen, I dare say that if the same type of earthquake rocks this state, even without a tsunami afterwards, 5 to 10 times more people would be missing or presumed dead. Therefore, without serious preparation throughout the rest of the nation, the other 49 states will have a slim and none chance of survival. And just think, many other nations around the world are behind us, the United States. Now, it's also worth noting, the entire country of Japan is about the size of Montana. The earthquake and tsunami, which just rocked a few tiny islands in Japan, would devastate the world. As a nation, we must have a new way of thinking. Starting with that, which I call the 12th commandment. Be ye mobile. That's right. Developing mobile facilities, homes, schools, offices, emergency medical units. As the earth moves, we must move with it. And yes, of course, this new industry will have to be green. Gridless facilities, starting with the 10,000 portable centers we are about to build across the nation. Now, this is what the Watchman program is all about, where many corporations, especially Walmart, will be sponsoring. And before we get into that proposal, if you're wondering what the 11th commandment is, thou shalt not get away with it. Especially if you are not preparing. Now, the Almighty's 10, you should already know by heart. Written on your heart, and certainly living them as a way of life. The warning of how fragile life is and the safeguards which must be in place to preserve life. We should learn now from Japan. Economically, most of the international community is in meltdown mode because of budget crisis, budget cuts, massive unemployment, higher taxes, and receiving less and less government services. Riots are breaking out everywhere. We've seen them in the United States, and Wisconsin and the UK and throughout Europe and the Philippines and the rest of Asia and certainly the Middle East, and with major or minor upheavals within society. The common theme around the world is dissatisfaction with governments, federal or local. Of course, regarding protesting, governmental dissatisfaction, I've been there. The Philippine people have almost got this action down as a science. Yeah, okay. People power within the Philippines have had their successes. However, because of economic meltdown, which many countries are now experiencing, budgets are failing, revenues are drying up, and droughts on jobs have left families destitute throughout the world. Again, simply, we need a new way of thinking. We must establish a new industry which will supply the jobs needed, build revenues, and fix budgets. Now, this is common knowledge. And not just in America or Latin America, but the EU, the European Union, Japan, APEC, Asia Pacific Economic Corporation, the AGOA, African American Growth and Opportunity, and yes, the turbulent Middle East. The world we have got to face the life and death challenges set before us. If we foolishly fail to prepare and change the course of current world events, the prophesied biblical wars and rumors of wars will come upon us prematurely, and our lives will simply be washed away economically and ecologically in a tsunami of ignorance. Economically and ecologically, the book Reconciling Us a Revolution, it's much more about the solutions than the problem. And yes, the problems are obvious and enormous. One of the top 10 covetous sins of most nations is wasteful spending. And this folly of us, the United States, goes back for decades. At least the last 6 administrations have not been immune to our blessed national wealth hemorrhaging away. That's right. Like the massive oil plumes exploding in the Gulf, this same useless waste has taken place in the United States and the international community for almost 40 years. And this without worldwide news coverage. Moreover, no one knew how bad it was. Just like the explosion of oil within the Gulf of Mexico, the first estimate was 5,000 barrels a day. However, later, most wise and truthful estimates were put forth. Over 70,000 barrels had gushed out with seemingly no end in sight. Okay, in the end, a solution was found. A plan was put in place, and the oil was capped. But I'm here to tell you that was because of the mercy and the grace of the Maker of all mankind. Listen, I'm not here to be politically correct. I'm simply here to be correct. And yes, for now, just as the Gulf was saved from catastrophic destruction no one has seen this side of creation, we have a plan to save creation as we know it. Again, economically, ecologically, this Watchman program will help not just the United States, but the entire international community back from the brink of destruction. And yes, it will help, certainly, if we stop throwing stones at one another within the media. I read a report on with Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. And she makes a good point when she says news clips like the Daily News doesn't help. They got spread across it panic, gas masks. However, we shouldn't laugh too loud. We will certainly need those gas masks and many other supplies and equipment, again, which we can find within many corporations such as Walmart. You better go there and get what you need. You will probably need it more than or faster than you think. And right now, you can find it very inexpensively. If you wait until, certainly it's too late, supply and demand, prices will go up nationwide, worldwide, if the product is there available in the first place. Back to Rachel Maddow. However, the blame game on her commentary show and political shows like hers overshadows much good. Again, I'm not here to be politically correct, just correct. And the problem is on the left and the right, and in the middle. We have Bill Press and his radio show, of course, Rachel Maddow. All of these are on the left. Alan Combs with Fox News and his program, just outlandish with many reports on the left. Two left, falling off the cliff. Got Mike Malloy, radio host. Ed Schultz, he's certainly not lacking in outlandish comments. Norman Goldman and his program. And, of course, on the right, we got Mark Levin, Michael Savage, the beautiful Laura Ingraham. Yet she pours out truth as well as poison at the same time. Glenn Beck, I love the man, but sometimes he needs to step back and check himself. You got radio host Hugh Hewitt, and of course Sean Hannity. Oh my! And listen, like Sean Hannity, many of these hosts do awesome things for the United States. And at the same time, sometimes the fame gets the best of them, and they, in many ways on their shows, tear it apart. A note to the radio and TV hosts featured that I've just discussed. Although this is a rebuke from your brother, your passion, I do admire. Anyone can email me with rebuttals or someone else that they'd like to put on this list at my email, which is chuck@worldemergency.com. And this is the reason. Throughout the United States, dog eat dog, backbiting has become so vicious that anger and hatred is more audible than any real communication. Very little talk is actually heard. Talk on so-called talk radio is but a soundbite. Screams and rage are the main themes of many of the programs. The nasty wailing, or should I use a biblical term, weeping and gnashing of teeth, will end tragically with what I call the 3-step death program of free speech. Listen, step 1, homegrown terrorist attacks against opposing foes, unsettling citizens throughout the country. Now, step 2, our nation's economy free-falling and a paranoid public frightened about more to come. Step 3, a government inept and unable to stop chaotic events, claiming political correctness, is forced to cut off all media, not just talk radio, and beyond the so-called fairness doctrine, pass new hate crime legislation. All opposing views will soon be silenced. No clarification, no rebuttal, and sadly, no truth. As the Creator speaks concerning the future of His word of truth. Now, I'm going to read this carefully from God's word. Verse 11, the days are coming, declares the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine throughout the land, not a famine of food or thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Men will stagger from sea to sea and wander from north to east. searching for the word of the Lord, but they will not find it. Amos chapter 8, verse 11 to 12, New International Version. Look it up. Now, since this is the soon coming future of even the Word of God, which will take place worldwide, it will certainly be the truth for us, the United States. And listen, before I continue, I want to give an admonishment to all within our great nation. This rebuke is not just to the political parties infighting, but the media news networks and their host personnel fighting against each other. Your hate-filled statements and spiteful remarks are ripping our country apart. By your own hands and words, you sow discord from one end of this nation to the other. Listen, here's another profound scripture which you need to understand. Verse 1. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 1, New International Version. Your wicked words are tearing the United States down, not just in the minds of America, but internationally as well. We must understand, even if we work things out economically, as a people, we must stop fighting. If not, no matter what happens economically, our nation will collapse. You got even religious hosts, radio hosts, have joined in undermining the nation's leaders. I understand the truth, and even helpful criticism must be spoken. But respect and disrespect are Grand Canyons away from each other. And yes, to disagree, we as a nation have the right to do so. Yet even with God's law, love and mercy must be mixed in. Instead of harsh words and rash reactions, respectful words and right actions with wisdom is walking within the way. Example, the minister who threatened to burn the Quran was unwise to do so. A nation, a free thinking people, can choose to burn any book. Yet a people promoting love will refuse to make that choice. And anyone who claims to worship God in love will never cause violence because of violence done to a book. For the true God is love. Now, listen, if we work things out and set up with the corporations, especially Walmart, more logistically sound than any corporation around the world, especially throughout the United States, to supply the emergency supplies and equipment, and set up training facilities on their own parking lot locations, portable emergency new facilities, home schools, offices, 10,000 of them across the nation, with other corporations again sponsoring. America's economic comeback will lead the free world back to prosperity once again. We can call it the comeback nation. Actually, when I first was writing the book, I wanted to call it America Still the Single Greatest Nation on the Face of the Earth. A nation blessed by God. That title, however, will have to wait for another publication. But understand, the economy throughout the United States will take, if we do it right, the global community again by storm. propping up the world's markets, cleaning the festering budget crisis wounds of other nations. You got countries like Spain and Greece and Portugal. Critical care economies are still flatlining, even on life support from the EU, European Union. Yet the rejuvenation of America's economy, prospering from one end of our nation to the other, spilling over to the rest of the world, will act as a soothing balm on the wounds of the world. That's right. Something wonderful within our nation is about to take place. It's magnificent. It's almost like the line used in the movie 2010 when America's spaceship had joined the Russian ship to get out of a certain orbit that was about to be destroyed, and the mysterious person came telling the captain, something wonderful is about to happen. I'm here to tell you, this something wonderful will take place within America almost immediately. Once again, the extraordinary thing is the solution was always there. It was always simple. It's always been. Our country could have gone back to being a prosperous nation, leading the free world as the last superpower on earth anytime we wanted. I'm sorry to get corny, but like Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz, kicking her heels as Glinda, the good witch from the north, had explained to her, you've always had the power. You could have gone back at any time. Well, listen, let's get into it. Let me explain how it's about to happen. The United States, our government, is about to unite itself with its citizens, corporations, and the private sector of all nations within the United States. Government officials and cabinet members will work hand in hand with companies throughout the country to provide not just the basic necessities of life, food, clothes, shelter, and emergency first aid to citizens within the nation, but always an understanding of a prosperous life within this country. Yet it will be a new way of life, a new way of living within the nation. A new industry is about to be born that provides citizens throughout the many cities and states not just what they need, but what they want, a prosperous way of life. The government and the corporation, working hand in hand, will provide homes, schools, offices, medical facilities, portable farms, and jobs in abundance. Not just minimum wage jobs, but living wage jobs. Not just living wage jobs, but prosperous careers. Successful entrepreneurships will spread across the country from one end of our nation to the other. Again, once started, our nation's economy, this moment on life support, will be revived and rejuvenated to the point where it breathes life-sustaining wealth throughout the international communities around the globe. Again, our sponsor, Walmart, and other corporations is the key, supplying the basic necessities of life, food, clothes, shelter, emergency first aid, and portable facilities. Green gridless facilities. Partnerships will develop between the federal government, local authorities, and the private sector corporations providing information, economic job centers in every city across the country. These centers will be sponsored by, again, corporations providing revenues in the billions for the federal government and the local communities. In the end, not a single dollar, listen carefully, will have been spent by the government for this program no new taxes given, no new taxes raised, no services cut, or furlough days to government workers. Not a single IOU will be issued. All bills will be paid by the system itself. The sponsoring corporations are estimated to receive 200 to 400 more than they gave out for the Economic Information Job Center set up. Listen, a conservative estimate of $1 trillion domestically and $1 trillion internationally of new revenue will be generated and shared by every city, every state in the union. That's $2 trillion on an annual basis. And listen, this new industry will not just provide the estimated $2 trillion and within and out of the country, but 10 million jobs. Within the first years of the program's completion, this new abundant income will be shared in each city across the nation. All of this magnificent revenue and tremendous prosperity supported by living wage jobs, and daily entrepreneurships will be a conservative level of achievement potentially realized within this new industry. Now, we've come to the point of explaining the details of this economic new revenue jobs program. Yet, before I give you the solution of what our nation will undertake, I'd like to dispel some criticisms that this program has received since it was introduced 3 administrations ago, simply because it wasn't the norm. It wasn't the way lobbyists, politicians, and those elected to office, desperately trying to hold on to power, did things. There is too much clinging to the old way of doing business, of doing things. Too many public officials are frightened by the new frontiers that this nation must pioneer, not just for our own citizens, but the entire global community. Again, as I've said, this publication could have been easily titled, "America, Still the Single Greatest Nation on the Face of the Earth." A nation blessed by God. Because our blessings from the Creator Himself lavished on us the ability to have our nation and its people prosper and have that prosperity spill over blessings for nations around the world. Therefore, from President Clinton's administration through President Bush administration and now within President Obama, this proposal, then titled the Watchman Program, was introduced. Almost on a daily basis to every congressman, every House of Representative, FEMA, before Homeland Security, the entire department, now Homeland Security, in every city and state across the Union. This proposal was sent as a solution, and every time it had been introduced, it literally had fallen on deaf ears. And might I add, not just ears that cannot hear, but eyes that cannot see, or shall I say, refuse to look. In many cases, tragically, we have been so used to doing things the old, rusted, corrupted way, our nation is on the fringe of collapse. Now, thankfully, throughout this administration, common sense is becoming more common again. And I know many of you would like to argue that point. But we are fighting our way back. but the fight has literally been 12 years and counting. Now remember, back on March 11, 2011, the day of Japan's earthquake, President Obama said, we need to reduce our demand for oil. Also, President Bush on February 1st, 2006 said, we have a serious problem. America is addicted to oil, which is often imported from unstable parts of the world. As the author of Reconciling Us and Revolution, I say we can immediately achieve our goal of reducing the use of foreign fuels with the Watchman program, making new facilities gridless and taking old facilities off the grid. 10,000 emergency economic information centers will be set up across the country, which themselves will be built gridless. That's right, not hooked up to any outside local power source. These information job centers will be examples of portable facilities operating on renewable energy power sources. Moreover, an array of homes, schools, offices, and medical units, also green, gridless units, will be on display. These centers of education will produce millions of jobs in new construction, manufacturing, and marketing positions. Maintaining this new green industry across the nation will sustain millions of jobs throughout the country. And when this new technology is utilized throughout the nation, a weaning process will be in full swing, replacing foreign fuels with renewable energy. Understand, the Watchman program proposal is a nationwide jobs training system. Thousands of new career training centers will be set up throughout the cities across the country. And understand that the facilities which will house these training centers, with all personnel maintaining operations throughout, will be located on the corporation's property which sponsors them. All construction center costs and professional workforce salaries for teachers, trainers, will be paid by the corporation host sponsors. And remember, a reminder, within that same State of the Union address President Bush gave in 2006, he said, tonight, I announced the Advanced Energy Initiative, a 22% increase in clean energy resource at the Department of Energy to push forth breakthroughs in new vital areas to change how we power our homes and offices. We will invest more in zero emissions, coal-fired plants, revolutionary solar, wind technologies, and clean, safe nuclear energy. Well, one of the main reasons this new green change has not taken place is simple. It's human nature. As the old saying goes, one who is forced to change his will has the same opinion still. Many elected officials within our legislative body still say, they want change. They even express dislike in pork barrel spending. Yet, when one political party wants to pass a legislative bill of change, the change for the other party's vote must come with a price. The price ends up being more pork. And the more pork, the more debt. In other words, our so-called legislations of change have cost us more than they have saved. Yes, for decades, every president has wanted the power to line item veto. Yet that delicious taste for more earmarked pork is not easily given up. Sadly, we are a pork-eating nation, and our arteries are hard and clogged, and our heart is failing. As a debtor nation, we are killing off our superpower status. Being in debt, listen carefully, being in debt as a nation gives the power to the nation we owe. Here's the wisdom in God's word. Verse 7. The rich will rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, New International Version. And listen, as the author of What Should You Do Before the Tribulation Age of 42, Trials and Troubles and Civil Unrest, and the author of Reconciling Us a Revolution, I'm very aware of the factual truths within this scripture. Sadly, we all must overcome our sins and our hidden sins. And tragically, I've had many to overcome. And yet, as a nation, we had better do it. Otherwise, our nation will collapse, and the entire international community with it. And yet, you have strategies of other countries like China are purchasing power resources such as oil from around the world, buying the rights of many nations, oil reserves throughout the international community. If America does not universally cure itself of this addiction, worldwide supply and demand will soon hold us hostage as a nation. I know you've heard that one who has an addiction of any kind and is kept from his supply is willing to do anything and everything, even sell his soul for one more fix. Now listen, the only cure in America's case is another alternative power source, a new energy industry must be introduced and made a way of life within the United States. Listen, in America and internationally, we must all get involved. Sponsorship corporations like Home Depot, Walmart, Lowe's Home Improvement Centers will be key locations for these emergency information new industry energy facilities. Also, co-sponsors such as Fox News and CNN, the BBC, Sky News, MSNBC, and yes, that's right. Let's not forget the Oprah Winfrey Network. This will be the major media contributors. Let's take, for example, Oprah Winfrey Network will benefit tremendously as a job facility sponsor. Many news networks will be seen on the big screens of all 10,000 plus centers across the nation and internationally. Just as CNN, you remember, it was seen on many airport TVs around the world. You go through the airport and you see a TV and it has CNN across it, and of course CNN is playing. All media networks who help support this new industry, these new green energy centers, will also benefit on a global scale. You also have popular food chains such as McDonald's and Subway, Taco Bell, Starbucks, Coca-Cola and others will sponsor the centers. They will have their own portable food facility within the center. A variety of corporations will be able to position themselves as sponsors of these centers across the country. And another example, regarding the First Lady's Let's Move Health and Wealth Initiative, nutritionist classes, along with 24-hour fitness facilities as a sponsor, can also be placed within these centers. Also, the Clinton Global Initiatives, headed by number 42, President Clinton, which are helping citizens throughout the world at this time, and their international influence would be a great beneficial fit. And yes, traditionally, energy companies such as Mobil, Shell, BP, British Petroleum, a host of other corporations, even OPEC. What is that? Organization, Petroleum Exporting Countries. They will be more than welcome to sponsor these green, gridless, portable information centers throughout the world. Like the Trump International. We welcome all building corporations to place their expertise stamp on these new facilities within the industry. You go back to politics. The problem between the parties is no budging on budgets. Our nation is over $15 trillion in debt and counting. We might as well say 16. Now, how can we tackle the Mount Everest, I can't even say it, it's so big, of debt when it's seemingly impossible to take Capitol Hill? Listen, there is no time for the same old chaotic legislation frustration. We have simply run out of time and money. I'm sure over time these systems do work, perhaps. Listen, however, at this present time, our country is in gridlock. Not just through Congress, but all community districts, legislation, government bodies, especially here in California. Nothing, and I say nothing, seems to get through. And if it does get through, it has pork barrel spending throughout, earmarks for lobbyists who push for it. The old payback pork for votes overwhelm our system with unnecessary spending and voids out any benefits from the program itself. Listen, there is a better way. This economic revenue jobs program does not require, again, new spending, new taxes raised, services cut, or furlough days to government employees. Listless legislation lazily going through Congress to vote on or avoid voting by leaving the state must be stopped. Nothing gets done. Yet it's simple. It simply takes the will of its people and the government to stop doing things as usual and unite itself with the corporations and the private sector, which the government is supposed to serve. We need the government to do just that, to serve and protect our nation, provide vital help to citizens in need, and then get out of the way. Now, listen, all of you note pollsters from the major news networks, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, BBC, Sky News, Al Jazeera networks, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Axel Springer and all of his networks of news media, the Herald Examiner in England, the Daily Yomiuri, if I pronounced that correctly, that's a Japanese publication, You have Pravda in Russia. You have CCTV in China. You have the 24-hour news network in India. And you also have the Canadian News 24-hour station. All of you. Suggestions to conduct a worldwide poll survey. I ask, would you, listen carefully, be in favor of an economic job plan which provides 10,000 emergency information training centers generating 1 million jobs per month? That's right. And $1 trillion annually in revenue? Now, all without new taxes, without new spending, and most importantly, without a gridlock legislation body. And last, for the bonus question, would you be in favor of receiving all the new green benefits that the Kyoto Treaty was supposed to bring, where the whole world wants to participate without being forced? If you've answered yes, this is the Watchman Program, energizing economies throughout the world. We must understand, as earthquakes, fires, tsunami floods, and famines ravage and devastate the land, we must be ready to move to safer and more productive areas. You have in the Great Depression, as the Dust Bowls rolled throughout the many states, raping the lands of her harvest, millions moved west. Americans gathered all their possessions, stacking and stuffing what they could within whatever vehicle they possessed. This drastic action was their only means of surviving. Mobilizing our facilities, homes, schools, office, medical units, and portable farms continues to be our means of survival. Here's a quote. In life, we must be ready as a boxer, mobile, fit, and prepared to roll with the punches of life. This is the new Watchman Program proposal. A new economic trillion-dollar industry. Billions of new revenue produced daily for the nation. A new nationwide infrastructure of biofuel, hydrogen, and natural gas stations will also be set up. This will be another vast revenue generator, richly fueling our economy. This Watchman Program will establish a new global green facilities industry, regulating and advancing zero-grid technologies, utilizing renewable power sources, all academies built on the same systematic foundation of 10,000 emergency information, economic, education, job centers is the solution. It is the same solution for our schools, our colleges, our universities, for they will take a big part in building these new facilities. Not just the centers themselves, but the homes, the schools, the offices, the emergency economic medical centers, and the portable farms. They will have a joint venture with the construction companies contracted out by the corporations who sponsor these centers, and many of these new green facilities will be built on the college campuses and universities from one end of our nation to the other. Not just providing the schools of higher learning with new revenues so perhaps they could have a heart and bring down their tuition fees, but supplying jobs to the students to be able to afford the tuitions given out, low or high. Multiple millions in new revenues will be pumped into all of these universities, and tens of thousands of dollars will be placed within the pockets of the students before they even leave the universities. Now, this Watchman program proposal will not be the be-all of our economic and ecological problems we have within the nation and the rest of the world. But a great many of the current problems can be solved with these facilities across the nation. Take the post offices, for instance. Those facilities which are closing because of economic crisis will be freely provided for within the 10,000 initial centers set up across the country. These employees that are scheduled to be laid off or fired can take up positions within these facilities. The office facility, their salaries themselves will be paid for through this private corporation-sponsored program. Not from the federal government, the private sector. Now, listen, I know your wheels are turning, especially with the politicians' ears that are listening. A great many programs throughout our nation can find relief as they are grafted in within the office facilities of these portable emergency green gridless facilities placed nationwide. WorldEmergency, along with a plethora of other corporations, will set up emergency disaster command information centers in every major city throughout the United States. These portable centers will contain all of the local and federal authorities working together side by side to help and deter and stop potential threats of terrorism. Emergency kits and medical supplies will be in storage for a percentage of citizens within the city. The police, fire department, search and rescue teams, FEMA, Homeland Security, the CDC, and other agencies will give help and understanding to citizens in every major city, providing information on what to do and how to do in a terrorist attack or threat, and you got it, lending a great deal of peace of mind. The budget crisis of these agencies will almost be eliminated as they infuse themselves within these centers, alleviating the expenditures of the federal and local governments in deep budget crisis within all agencies across the country. This is the solution, the basic synopsis of the Watchman program. You can familiarize yourself with the details at our website, World Emergency Radio. This program, again, is sponsored by Walmart, the logistics giant within the entire industry, providing the basic necessities of life: food, clothes, shelter, and emergency first aid. I'm your host, Chuck Thompson, Director of WorldEmergency, giving you the understanding of what you should do before the tribulation age of 42. If you have questions in regards to other products and services, whether through our sponsor Walmart or WorldEmergency.com, you can contact me direct, 626-243-8200, or email us at help@WorldEmergency.com. We look forward to serving your needs for today, tomorrow,